Hi, and welcome into Real Conversations. I am Thomas Manning here with the Reel to Reel Film Festival from Kings Mountain, North Carolina. So glad to be joined today by Samantha McLeod, the director of a phenomenal short film, The Thief. And Samantha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation. I'm
Yeah,
super excited to be here and participate in the festival, whatever form that takes.
yeah, definitely. So if you want to just start things out, giving the audience a little bit of background on your filmmaking career and kind of what has led you to where you are right now.
Yeah, so The Thief is actually my very first film. I did it at a program at the London Film School called First Film Summer School. Before that, I've really always been a teacher and focused on the film study side. I took some courses on film studies in college. I'm an English teacher and I have a film studies elective. So I've always written about film and taught um, film analysis. So this is kind of my intro into filmmaking, and I hope to keep making that transition.
Definitely, definitely. Um, so this was a film that you made in London and then brought back to the States, correct?
Yes.
And so that was, I think in the production notes you mentioned that you shot the film in 3 hours and then edited it in 3 hours as well. And then
Yeah.
that's kind of the cut that you brought back. Do you want to talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting program. And so what we did was everyone, it was an applicant-based program, so I was with 11 other student directors, and all I really brought was the story idea, and I wrote it on the way there. So in that time, we remade the film 3 times. So the first time we had 30 minutes to shoot it, no professional actors, no professional crew, just us with some cameras. And then the next time we had 90 minutes, still like no professional crew or actors. And the final time, after several table reads and looking at everyone's cuts together as a cohort and reviewing, we finally worked with professional actors and a professional DP chosen by the London Film School for each individual film. And we had 3 hours to shoot it. The next morning, I met with a student editor and I worked with her for 3 hours, and then that was it. So really, after a total of 6 hours in production, that's what I brought back from the States.
So you only had two cast members for this film. You
Yes.
had Trevor Murphy and Louise Ann Monroe, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And just I think Trevor's performance really carried most of the short runtime.
Yeah.
Very little dialogue, just a lot of expression on his face. So what was it like working with him?
Oh my God, it was wonderful. So before that, my actor was just like another student in the film, and he was very like energetic, and he was Italian, so he didn't really totally understand. The translation didn't always make its way fully. So the first 2 cuts, they were like a pure comedy film because that's how he reacted. And he was very um, like like uh, enthusiastic about his movements with it. So when Trevor did it, that was really the part where it became a horror. He like brought in so much fear, which I guess makes sense with the situation going on. And I was like, oh my goodness, let's work with this, but let's find a comedic balance as well. So that take with him uh, finally like pulling his hand out and screaming, we just kind of rolled with that for several minutes, and he just kept screaming over and over and over again. Um, so he definitely had a lot of fun with it as well.
And one of the stories I noticed in the production notes that I absolutely loved, talking about the search for the prop knife. And I think one of your crew members, you had to go throughout different like hardware stores. And I think one of your quotes, you said, like, is this something that you can murder me with? Do you want to tell that? You want to tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I so this is my first film, and I had to find the props on my own, and it was also my first time in London, so I wasn't really familiar with their laws, I guess. And so knife laws are super, super strict in London. Like you can't even carry a knife around unless you like just bought it for the kitchen or whatever and you're like bringing it home. Like they are so strict. And I didn't know that. So I actually like brought like not a big one, but like a real little kitchen knife to the second cut, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like you're going to shut us down." I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." So for the third cut, I needed like a costume prop, but they all looked so fake, and I was like, oh, I can't find one that looks good enough. I mean, it's July, we're nowhere near like Halloween or anything. Um, so I'm like, well, maybe we can change the murder weapon so I can use something that would still bring in the realism that I want. Um, so me and the graduate student who was kind of managing the project in a way, he was like our maybe like our producer kind of. Me and him just took an afternoon to go to different costume stores and hardware stores to try to find new murder weapons. And that's definitely been the only time where I've spent an afternoon with a man that I've known for only a week going into stores being like, do you think you can murder me with this? And to go along, yeah, and to go along with that, like I was searching my Airbnb for like rope and things. I'm like, I wonder, I've never been to an Airbnb where I'm like, oh, I hope the host like has some murder paraphernalia that I could use in my film.
Wow. Yeah. Good thing it was for the context of filmmaking and nothing else. That would probably be a bit troublesome. But
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Um, so one thing I have to ask, I'm a massive fan of the movie Kill Bill and Quentin Tarantino in general. Were those some direct homages to Kill Bill with the list you had in there?
yes, totally. Bill, Daryl, definitely from Kill Bill.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess are you a fan of Tarantino himself, and he tried to take some inspiration from him?
I am. I love filmmakers with this, I guess, like very enthusiastic, flamboyant style that kind of plays on the realism aspect of film, and just like what you can exaggerate in the most interesting, unique way, for sure, whether that's violence or just music or something more G-rated.
And you mentioned the music. It sounds like there were some issues with some of the sound mixing and the scoring, with some background noise there on the filming location. So what was that process like to get everything cleaned up and how you had wanted it presented on film?
Yeah, so the one of the things that the school didn't provide is sound in post-production. So the cut that I brought back to the States had no music. It just had whatever diegetic sound we picked up while we were filming. So um, music is so important in film. I think that's like half of the film. Um, and it's really important to underscore the images and the emotions that you want your audience to feel as a filmmaker. So when I got back home, I didn't really have any contacts in that film department, but I contacted some old childhood friends because I knew when we all went to North Carolina State University, they actually made beats for rappers, and they would make beats for the rappers that showed up at the Cypher, which is a rap, um, which is like something that is hosted at NC State's campus like every Monday night. But anyway, so I contacted them and I asked if they wanted to add music and kind of update some of the sound for me. And they said, sure, no problem. And I just kind of gave it to them. We watched it once or twice together to talk about like the tone we want. And then I just said, okay, well, I'll see you in a week. And they did their magic. And it like, I thought they did such a cool job. So the sound that you're talking about during filming is the whole time we were filming for those 3 hours, there was this like alarm going off in the alleyway that did not stop. Like we get there and we're like, oh God, this is annoying, but I'm sure it'll stop soon. But just the whole time, like wee wee, like nonstop, and it was so loud. So what John Santos actually did is he sampled that sound and he made it into the soundtrack that you hear. And at first it kind of sounds like Jaws in a bit because it's like da na na na. But when it cuts to the regular diegetic sound, the alarm, like you see that, oh, like this is continuing the soundtrack. And I think that's such a cool way to connect this idea of like kind of like the magical realism in the film and how it does border on what's realistic and what's not, and this like dark plot that is happening, but also the comedy aspect of it. So John Santos did amazing, and Alec Piersga kind of updated some of the Foley for me to make the very fake looking knife at least sound real.
And as for the script, it looks like it was very detail oriented. That every little prop had purpose in relation to the narrative, like even the book that the man was reading. And so, just what was it like in the development of the script to make sure that nothing in the scene was wasted?
Yeah, so what the only guideline I was given is that I had to write a story called The Thief. So it was when I was accepted in like March or May, I had a couple months until August to chew on the idea for a bit. So it was a lot of collaboration. And when I did go to London, I went to London a few weeks early. And I was traveling alone. So as I met people and they asked what I was doing, I would tell them my idea. And I feel like I just collected new ideas and new twists from people I met. And as I would be like shopping in London or just exploring London, I would find like little pieces. I'd be like, oh, this is good, this is good. And he was actually digging through my own personal backpack. So that was like a lot of those things weren't even really in the script. He really did just rummage through my personal items and like toss them over and like, let's not forget that. But the book was one thing. So the first two cuts and something that I wrote into the script was that the thief would be reading a book by Agatha Christie called Dumb Witness. It's funny, it's foreshadow. However, after the second cut, ironically, the book was stolen. That's not the only prop that was stolen. A lot of my props were stolen during this. I just wasn't careful enough. So for the last cut, for the last and final cut, I had to go out and find a new book. We ultimately settled on Crime and Punishment because Trevor Murphy has actually read it. He was familiar with it. And we were able to kind of talk about the book and exactly where in the book he is when he decides to commit the crime.
Yeah, that's really impressive. Just how the acute attention to detail you had there. So I applaud you for that for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap things up, is there anything else you want to touch on that maybe I didn't get to, just involving the film's production or your storytelling techniques?
I guess like the big thing that I want audiences to have as they watch this film and as they finish up, when I was given the prompt of The Thief, before that I knew I definitely wanted to tell a story about women, because that's just a story that's important to me to share. One thing I love about filmmaking is that we are able to share not only our own experiences, but the experience of others as well, even if they don't quite have the same experience and perspective as us. And I think about what's going on in the world right now, that is so important to elevate different voices in film. So the voice I wanted to elevate is of women's in this film, because when I hear the prompt, The Thief, I can't help but think about how many times we hear on the news or just in our personal lives and our friends, like how women become victims of these crimes, especially with men who are in power or think they have power in the situation, and they never receive justice for that. So I wanted to make a film that kind of disrupt that narrative of power and expectations and do it in kind of like this fun but horror, dark comedy way. So I think that's the really important part about the theme in these short films.
And what does it mean for you to be able to distribute this kind of film to film festivals? And just how do you feel about film festivals and their impact on young filmmakers like yourself?
Oh my God, I think they're so important, like especially as a first-time filmmaker. These festivals have really been my very first opportunity to network with other filmmakers, and be a part of this whole community that kind of seemed unreachable when I was on the outside. And as a teacher, like it's something that I want to help my students be able to do as well, because I work with a lot of student filmmakers who want to make that breakthrough and who need the encouragement of, we'll just make a film, send it out, meet people, use that platform.
Definitely, for sure. Anywhere that people can find you on social media or keep up with your work?
I have an Instagram, so it's Sam_L McLeod.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think that's going to do it for us here on Real Conversations. I'm Thomas Manning alongside Samantha McLeod. Samantha, thank you again so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys next time on Real Conversations.